Have you ever wondered why, even when everything seems right, the laughter, the comfort, the fresh start relationships between older men and middle aged women often fade? Silently. You hear it all the time. A man in his late 60s, widowed, dignified, still full of life, meets a warm, energetic woman in her 50s. There's connection. There's companionship. There's even joy. And for a while, it feels like life is giving them both a second chance. But then, almost without warning, the phone stops ringing. The texts grow fewer. The dinners turn into excuses. Until one day, they're simply strangers again. No big argument, no betrayal, just a slow, quiet unraveling. Why does this happen? Why do relationships that seem so full of promise so often end in heartbreak, especially for people in their second half of life? I'm Dr. James, and for over 35 years I've walked alongside older adults through the toughest and most transformative seasons of their lives. I've seen love rekindled. I've seen companionship bloom. And yes, I've also seen good people left feeling confused, hurt, or worse, emotionally and financially devastated. And the truth I've come to learn, these endings have very little to do with romance and everything to do with reality. In today's video, we're going deep, not into the drama, not into the headlines, but into the 7 real, honest, often unspoken reasons why relationships between older men and middle-aged women don't always go the way we hope. This isn't about pointing fingers. It's not about blaming men for their expectations or women for their choices. It's about clarity. It's about protection. It's about giving you the knowledge to make wise decisions with your heart and your future. So if you're over 60 or love someone who is, I invite you to listen closely. Because reason number 7, the one I'll share at the end, it's the reason no one talks about. Yet it's the one that determines whether you'll thrive or just survive in love later in life. So before we dive in, click subscribe if you want real no-nonsense insights about aging wisely. Give this video a like if you've ever found yourself wondering what really happened in someone else's relationship or your own. And tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced a connection that faded without warning? Now, let's begin with truth number 1, one that reveals more than just relationship patterns. It reveals how we change with age. Reason 1, mismatched expectations and life goals. Let's start with one of the most common yet least talked about reasons relationships between older men and younger women go sideways: mismatched expectations. Not because people lie, but because people change. After 65, many men are in a stage of life where peace is a priority. You've retired, downsized, maybe lost a spouse. Your definition of happiness has matured. You might find joy in walking your dog, gardening, fishing, or reading by a quiet fire. But now imagine you meet someone in her 40s or 50s, independent, active, still climbing the ladder of her career. She may have teenagers at home. Her life is in motion, not retreat. Her weekends are packed with travel events and ambitions. At first, the contrast feels refreshing. She brings energy like movement, but over time, that same energy may begin to feel like pressure. You want Sunday mornings at home. She wants to try a new brunch place across town. You want silence. She wants plans. And then the relationship becomes a negotiation, a tug of war between rest and rush. I saw this play out with a gentleman named Harold, 72, a retired marine biologist. He met Amanda, 49, a creative director at an advertising firm. They were great on paper, both loved nature, had a shared love for jazz. But Harold was slowing down. His knees didn't like long hikes anymore. He liked routine home-cooked meals, slow walks. Amanda, meanwhile, had work trips, conferences, yoga classes, and dinner parties. They tried, They really did. But in the end, Harold said it felt like I was always catching up, and I was just tired. The truth is, it's not about lack of love, it's about lack of alignment. According to research published by the National Institute on Aging, emotional compatibility isn't just about shared interests, it's about shared timing. That's why so many relationships break down not with a bang, but a slow, silent fade. So here's the real wisdom. Before you fall in love with someone's smile or energy, ask about their calendar. Ask how they spend their free time. Ask what their dream weekend looks like. Ask what they're chasing, if anything at all. Because love isn't about changing your pace to match someone else's. It's about finding someone who walks beside you, not in front or behind. And if that means choosing solitude instead of constant compromise, that's not defeat. That's self-respect. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's alignment. It's a chance to protect the rhythm of life you've earned. And that rhythm, it matters more than momentary sparks. Reason. 2. Financial entanglements and unequal contributions. This next reason may be even harder to talk about than mismatched energy. Money. Specifically, how easily finances become a hidden fault line in relationships between older men and younger women. Let's be clear, this isn't about greed, it's about assumptions. Let me share a story about Malcolm 69, a retired architect living comfortably on a pension and investment income. He'd been careful his whole life, paid off his home, lived below his means. Then he met Teresa, 51, a divorced woman with a small online business. She was charming, energetic, and loved Malcolm's quiet wisdom. He invited her into his life, and soon his bank account. Dinners, weekend trips, helping her just this once with a car repair. Then came an emergency dental bill. Then she needed help covering rent for a month or two. Malcolm thought he was being generous. He was being used. Not necessarily maliciously, Teresa may have truly intended to repay him, but the bottom line. By the time it ended, Malcolm had drained nearly $18,000 from his retirement savings, and he hadn't even realized it. He told me it didn't feel like a relationship anymore. It felt like sponsorship. And here's what's worse, Malcolm's adult children noticed. They were concerned. And that added tension to an already fragile situation. Research from the National Council on Aging shows that financial vulnerability increases sharply in seniors who enter new relationships without clear financial boundaries. You've spent your whole life building a foundation that deserves to be protected not just from fraud, but from fuzziness. And fuzziness often comes wrapped in romance. So here's your safeguard. Keep your finances separate, always. No joint accounts, no shared credit cards, no co-signed loans. If you want to be generous, fine. But define the boundary first. I can help with one dinner a week. I can contribute to a weekend getaway, not your lifestyle. And if that boundary causes conflict, that's not a red flag. That's a warning flare. Because someone who truly loves you respects what you've built. They won't make you feel guilty for protecting your peace of mind. And if they do, it's time to walk away with your dignity and your savings intact. Reason. 3. Different energy levels and lifestyle needs. Let's revisit something that goes beyond schedules and goals and into something physical. Energy. After 65 or 70, it's no secret that our bodies change. Even the most active, healthy senior man may find that certain things, long travel days, all-night events, or constant socializing just don't feel sustainable anymore. And that's okay. You've earned the right to slow down. In fact, according to the Mayo Clinic's Geriatrics Department, energy conservation is a key strategy for maintaining long-term health and vitality in older adults. But here's the challenge. Many women in their 40s and early 50s are still in peak motion. They're still climbing in their careers, managing kids or teens, and staying physically active. They may go to Zumba, then dinner, then log into work at 10 p.m. That's invigorating for them. But for someone in their 70s, it can feel overwhelming. I remember a man named Franklin 74 who shared his story in one of our support groups. He was dating Melissa 50, a real estate agent. She was sharp stunning and her energy was nonstop. She wanted to bike travel, plan parties, volunteer. Franklin said, "It was like standing next to a generator. I loved her light, but I needed a dimmer switch." The problem wasn't just that he couldn't keep up, it was that he felt guilty for not wanting to. He began to feel old in her presence, tired, inadequate. That's not love, that's pressure. A Harvard Health study once said, when two partners have incompatible energy rhythms, even small daily decisions can feel like negotiations. And that's exactly what happened. When every weekend becomes a debate, when every outing feels like a challenge instead of a joy, it wears down the connection. That's why you must be honest from the start. Ask yourself, do I want this level of activity in my life? Do I have the energy, not just physically, but emotionally, to match this pace? And is it fair to her or to me to pretend I can? Because here's the truth. Love shouldn't feel like a treadmill you're trying to keep up with. It should feel like a chair beside a fire, comfortable, grounding, and peaceful. And if someone else's tempo is too fast, too chaotic, or just not right, that doesn't make them wrong. It just means your rhythms are meant to play different songs. And it's better to part ways now than to live in resentment later. Reason 4. Emotional baggage and past trauma. It's a tender subject, but it needs to be said plainly. We all carry baggage. The older we get, the heavier it often becomes. Grief from losing a spouse, regrets from missed opportunities, memories of betrayal, relationships that left scars. By the time a man reaches his mid-60s or 70s, he's seen a lot of life. He may have raised children, buried a loved one, nursed a parent, or lived through a divorce that changed how he sees love forever. And often he's still healing even if he doesn't realize it. Now imagine entering a new relationship. At first it feels like a clean slate, a chance to start fresh. But as weeks go by, old patterns start creeping in. Maybe your new partner gets anxious when you don't call by 6 p.m. because her last relationship was with someone emotionally distant. Maybe you find yourself withdrawing when things get too intimate because the last time you opened your heart, it shattered. This isn't fiction. This is the quiet, painful reality of emotional baggage, and no one is immune. William, a 69-year-old carpenter from Oregon, lost his wife of 38 years to cancer. A few years after she passed, he met Carla, 56, a nurse who had recently ended a long marriage to a controlling man. They bonded over grief, over healing. But soon Carla's need for reassurance clashed with William's need for solitude. William would spend hours in his workshop without texting back. Carla interpreted this as rejection, abandonment. Arguments followed, small at first, then more intense. William later said, "I thought love would help us both heal." But instead, we kept reopening wounds neither of us had closed. According to mental health experts at the Cleveland Clinic, older adults entering relationships should be especially mindful of unresolved grief trauma or unhealthy patterns because the emotional resilience we once had in our 30s or 40s simply isn't the same. You get tired more easily, not just in the body, but in the heart. So here's what you need to know. Before dating again, ask yourself if you're still bleeding from something old. If the answer is yes, seek healing, not a relationship. Therapy is not weakness, it's preparation. And when you meet someone, ask with gentle curiosity, what have you been through? What have you learned about yourself and past relationships? What are you still healing from? If either of you avoids those questions or responds with blame, bitterness, or defensiveness, take it as a sign. Because here's a truth worth repeating. Love doesn't heal wounds. Awareness does. And two people with unhealed pain can end up hurting each other without even trying. You owe yourself peace. Don't sacrifice it for temporary comfort. Reason. 5. Family dynamics and external pressures. No relationship exists in a vacuum. When an older man starts dating a younger woman, especially in later life, family reactions can become the silent third partner in the relationship. Sometimes those reactions are loving and supportive. Other times, not so much. Let's be honest, adult children don't always understand or accept their father's new love interest, especially if she's younger, especially if they fear she's after his money, especially if they feel their mother's memory is being replaced. And middle-aged women often bring their own complex family webs, ex-husbands, children in high school or college, aging parents, or even jealous siblings. So when the relationship begins, it's rarely just two people. It's two entire ecosystems, and those systems may not want to merge. Michael, a 66-year-old widower from California, met Karen, a 53-year-old graphic designer. They hit it off quickly, both artistic, both easygoing, both looking for companionship rather than a whirlwind romance. But when Michael introduced Karen to his adult daughter and son, the energy shifted. They weren't rude, but they weren't warm. His daughter questioned Karen's intentions. His son worried about his inheritance. Michael felt trapped between the woman who made him smile and the children who had been his whole life. Karen, meanwhile, had a teenage son who resented Michael's presence, calling him the replacement. Michael tried to balance it all until he realized he was emotionally bankrupt. He told me, it felt like I was juggling dynamite, and no matter how carefully I moved, someone was going to get hurt. According to research from AARP, intergenerational tension is one of the top contributors to failed second relationships among seniors. So what can you do? Be proactive. If you're dating someone, talk to your family early, not to ask for permission, but to prevent surprise. Explain your intentions. Introduce slowly. Set boundaries firmly. And if they still don't approve, listen. Not obey, but listen. Sometimes they see things you don't. Other times their fears are unfounded but valid. Either way, you'll learn something. On the flip side, if your partner has complicated family baggage, be honest with yourself about what you're willing to carry. Are you ready to be a stepfather at 70? Are you willing to deal with drama from an ex-spouse or rebellious teen? Can your peace of mind handle that? If the answer is no, that's not unkind, that's honest. And honesty will save you more than love ever could. Reason 6. Loss of independence and personal space. We often think of love as an addition, but in later life, love can sometimes feel like subtraction. You finally carved out a rhythm. Your mornings are quiet. Your home is your sanctuary. Your decisions are your own. And then someone new enters that world. At first, it's delightful. She's bringing laughter into your space, maybe new ideas, new energy. But then, your kitchen starts to look different. Your calendar fills up without your consent. Your silence gets interrupted. Your personal space shrinks. And suddenly, the comfort you spent years building feels compromised. David, 71, told me something once that still sticks with me. He said I didn't know how much my independence mattered until someone else rearranged my spice rack. It sounds funny, but it wasn't. He'd spent years rebuilding his life after divorce. Every piece of his home, the way he arranged his living room, the way he made coffee, the book stacked beside his reading chair was intentional. When his girlfriend started staying over, she brought joy and disruption. She meant well, but over time he felt like a guest in his own home, and when he brought it up, she was hurt. She saw his desire for solitude as rejection. David ended things, not because he stopped loving her, but because he loved himself enough not to lose his peace. The National Institute on Aging has stated that personal space and autonomy are key predictors of mental health in older adults, especially for men who spent their lives providing for others and now finally get to put themselves first. So here's your reminder. A relationship should feel like a warm blanket, not a straitjacket. And if someone's presence in your life starts to make you feel crowded, confused, or exhausted, you're allowed to choose solitude, not because you're unlovable, but because your peace of mind is not negotiable. Or reason. 7. Societal pressure and misaligned intentions. Let's close with one of the deepest, most invisible forces that shape later in life relationships: expectation. The world has a strange way of telling older men they shouldn't be alone. You're still young at heart. You need someone. Don't you want companionship? And sometimes we internalize those voices. We start to think, maybe they're right. Maybe I do need someone. Maybe I'm incomplete like this. So we enter a relationship not from desire, but from fear. Fear of loneliness. Fear of judgment. Fear of missing out. But here's what often happens. You meet someone who wants something very different. Maybe she wants marriage. Maybe she's seeking security. Maybe she's afraid of time slipping by and is pushing for commitment. And here you are just wanting connection. Quiet love. No chaos. That's not partnership. That's a tug of war. Richard, a 68-year-old from New York, met Ellen, 54, through mutual friends. Everyone said it was perfect. They both laughed at the same jokes. They both hated winter, but Richard just wanted someone to spend Sunday mornings with. Ellen wanted a new husband. He tried. For months, until he realized he was performing, not living. I wasn't lonely, he said. I was just trying not to disappoint everyone else. Society has many scripts, but you don't have to read from them. You get to choose your story. If you want a relationship, beautiful, but if you don't, that's not failure. That's wisdom. The Harvard Health Study on Aging concludes that the most fulfilled older adults are not those in relationships, but those who feel in control of their life choices. And that includes the choice to stay single. So if your intentions don't match your partner's say-so. Early, clearly, respectfully. Because if you pretend your needs are the same just to make it work, someone will end up resentful. Maybe her. Maybe you. And the worst loneliness in the world is feeling alone in a relationship you didn't even want. Choosing peace over pressure. You've made it this far, thank you. That tells me something important about you. You're not just someone chasing companionship, you're someone seeking truth. And truth matters more than charm, more than chemistry, more than what society tells you a man your age should want. Let's revisit the wisdom we've explored together. You've seen how mismatched expectations can leave both partners feeling drained and disappointed. You've witnessed how financial entanglements, no matter how well-intentioned, can cost far more than dollars. They can cost dignity. You've understood that different energy levels aren't just about stamina. They're about identity. How we spend our days shapes how we feel about life. You've learned that emotional baggage isn't something you outgrow, it's something you must unpack with patience and self-awareness. You've heard how families, children, exes, extended relatives can create invisible wedges in a relationship you thought was just about two people. You've reflected on how deeply independence matters and how losing your solitude can feel like losing yourself. And finally, you've acknowledged that societal pressure to be in a relationship, to not be alone, can push even the wisest among us into situations that don't serve our souls. But here's what I want you to carry with you above all else. You are not broken if you choose to stay single. You are not selfish if you protect your peace. And you are not less of a man because you no longer want to perform for love. You've lived through decades of challenge and change. You've loved, worked, sacrificed, built. Now is your time to ask, what does happiness look like for me? Is it someone to share coffee with on the porch? Is it quiet evenings with music and your favorite book? Is it traveling solo to places you've always wanted to go? Or maybe it's reconnecting with old friends, mentoring younger men, giving your time to your community. Whatever it is, make it yours. There's no trophy for dying in a relationship that made you feel unseen. There's no reward for holding in your truth just to keep someone else comfortable. But there is something priceless on the other side of honesty, clarity, freedom, and peace. So if you're in a relationship and you've been feeling uneasy, pause and reflect. And if you're considering dating again, start not with, who do I want? Start with, what kind of life do I want to wake up to every day? Then only allow people in who add to that, not subtract from it. To see, take action, what now? If any of this resonated with you, you're not alone. Every week, thousands of seniors across the country face these very same questions. And the more we talk about them, the more empowered we become. So here's what I'd love you to do. Take a moment today, tonight, after the video ends, and write down what brings you peace, not what brings you excitement, not what others expect of you, but what brings you that grounded, quiet feeling that tells you this is right. Keep it somewhere you can revisit. That list. It's your compass. And if someone walks into your life and pulls you off that path, you'll know it. You won't need to argue. You won't need to justify. You'll just know, because peace doesn't feel like confusion. It feels like home. Your turn, let's talk now. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been in a relationship that slowly drained your joy, even though it looked good on the outside? Have you ever felt societal pressure to find love, even when your heart wasn't sure? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Let's create a space where honesty and wisdom matter more than performance and pressure. And if this video helped you gain clarity, please like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe to this channel, because we're just getting started. In the next video, we'll explore 6 powerful ways to build a rich, joyful life on your own terms. After 65, no dating apps, no pressure, no pretending, just real strategies for real peace. I'm so glad we had this time together. And remember, you're not behind. You're not too late. You're just now finally getting to live on your own terms. And that's the best kind of love there is. See you in the next one.